Okay, let's talk about binomial distribution, the characteristics, especially the mean and variance and standard deviation. So for the we know that we use a sigma, right, for the variance and standard deviation, right? So let's talk about when the mean and the variance of or the standard deviation of binomial distribution. Okay, so the formula, as you can see in the slide, the formula for typically we use mu for the mean, right? And this x is the binomial variable, random variable, and it's equal to n. N is, you know, the sample space, and then pi is the probability of interest, right? So this is the formula for the mean, and we typically use a sigma for the variance or the standard deviation. So the variance is square is n pi and 1 minus pi, right? And so this is for the variance, and this is for the mean. So by the way, we are talking about the binomial distribution, right? So you know that this x is binomial random variable, and the standard deviation, I'll just SD. Standard deviation is just sigma, right? So which is n pi 1 minus pi. Okay, so this is the formula. So this is variance and mean, right? So this is example. When n is a 5, and then the pi is 1.1, the average is 0.5. So if you look at this graph, since like 0 is the 0, right, is most frequent event, so I think that on average I think the random variable, right, will 0.5 is the value for the random variable x, and then mu is n pi. This is another example. When n is a 5 and the interest, right, the probability of interest is 0.5, is on average the value for the random variable x is 2.5. So you can think this is like the tossing a coin. So flip a coin. So let's say you flip a coin 5 times, and on average, right? So when you flip a coin 5 times, on average, average number of getting head, for example, is 2.5, right? Okay. So another, maybe we can use another example. Let's say when we have a 5 multiple choice questions, let's say from problem number 2, 4, and 5. Let's say we have 5 problems, and each problem has, let's say, 5 choices, A, B, C, D, E, right? So we have 5 problems, and then each problem has 5 choices. So basically, assume that you don't know anything about this problem, and so basically this is like you have to make a guess. So since there's 5 choices for each problem, the probability of guessing, right? Probability of guessing correct answer is obviously is what? 0.2, right? Because we have 5 problems, so 1 over 5. So the probability is about 20%. So if you make guess, right? Since you have 5 choices for each problem, the probability of guessing the correct answer is 0.2, right? So obviously this is we can, let's say, we can define random variable x as number of, right? Let's say number of correct answers. And you know that this x is a binomial variable because this is whether is, so we can think this is like there's only two cases, right? Either what? Correct or what? Incorrect. So in that sense, the x is a binomial variable. So correct, incorrect, right? So for example, the problem one, I make a guess and then I think that C is the answer if my guess is correct, right? So this is correct, right? Or maybe the second problem, incorrect, and then correct, incorrect, and incorrect, for example, right? So obviously this is a binomial, the x is a binomial, the variable, I mean, it's variable, right? This is, and so this is like, you can think this is a binomial distribution. Okay, now, let's say find the mean value of x. So on average, right, when you make the guess, when there's a 5 multiple choice questions, how many problems will you get correct answer? How many problems on average, right? So we have to find the mean of the random variable x. The formula is what? N pi, right? So we know that there's 5 problems. So we know that it's n is 5 since we have 5 problems. And then pi, which is probability of event of interest, right? Which is 0.2. So we know that it's pi is 0.2, right? So on average, we can 5 multiplied by n is 5 and pi is 0.2, right? So 5.2, which is 1. So on average, right? On average, when there's 5 multiple choice questions and each problem has 5 choices, on average, you will get only 1 correct answer on average. And the standard deviation, right? Standard deviation, and we used formula, we used sigma, and then x, random variable x, is root of n pi 1 minus pi, which is root n is 5, and then pi is 0.2, and 1 minus pi is 0.8, right? So this is 1 minus pi is 0.8. Okay, so you can, I think you can get the answer if you use a calculator. Okay, so let me just end my lecture here.